adjusting the settings. Nope, not that one. Window.
Can you see me okay?
Yeah, well, I see your truck.
You don't see me? That's
N-
weird.
no, I see the road.
Here I am.
All right, now we got this set okay. All right.
You doing the whole multi-stream thing again?
Yeah, just still testing it. Seems to be working. I've got yeah, I got Facebook video up on one computer, and I see the stream going out. So good, good.
I want to applaud you for how you handled that racist thing. I was laughing my ass off reading it.
Thanks.
That was awesome. He was like, "Well, you know, I'm not difficult to find. You know, stop by." I was like, "Man, James, kitty."
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. Some folks are a little dense, but
Yeah. Well, bravery is not high on their food chain. So usually the dudes that are loud like that and have that achievement are the biggest cowards on planet Earth. These end up marching in small towns where there's like three black people. They never come to Brooklyn or South Philly or North Philadelphia. They know better. Don't think there's enough cops in Philly to protect you.
output. I show you me built it. Okay. Now the audio should be going out to both streams.
Cool. How many viewers did you have last time?
We had a few. I think about 25 was the most on Facebook. We
That's
had
cool.
about three on all the others. I don't know if they were all the same three or what.
We're
Um,
gonna count them as separate people.
all right, we can do that. Um, oh, yep. Your audio is working there on Facebook. Good. And looks like audio's working on YouTube. Cool.
Cool.
Um, yeah, so today I wanted to talk a bit about coffee, of course. Coffee's important. Oh,
Okay.
here's somebody.
Yes.
Miss
Yes. The
Coconut.
homicide rate would go up exponentially if we didn't have coffee.
Yes, yes, I have a bit of coffee.
why? Why is
Uh,
the murder rate going up? We don't have any coffee, dude. We got to get coffee. The bodies are going to keep piling up unless we find some coffee.
Seriously, it's impossible to make it through the day. Mine today is a bit of Hawaiian Hawaiian coffee.
Okay. I was going to ask you what your brew was, so I can get you like a gift bag or something.
Oh, no need, no need. I appreciate it though. Yeah, I like coffees from all over the place, so I tried. Excuse me. I try to get new coffees all the time.
Ooh.
Um, hey, hey, how's it going? You're still muted.
Have
Uh,
you tried that one? I don't know the name of it, but it has like a skull and crossbones on it. It's supposed to be like super super strong.
no.
Do prefer to use I'll get you some.
Awesome. Your connection's
Now,
a
if you're
little
unable to
slow.
sleep for if you're unable to sleep for 2 days, I don't want you getting mad at me.
Oh, no, no. I basically just don't even worry about it. I've never been really affected by coffee. I've drunk it so long, I guess. I don't know.
Oh wow.
It's
I only drink it when I've definitely failed to get enough sleep the night before because caffeine works with me very quickly. And then I don't really consume as much sugar as I used to, so that works really good with me now too. So I guess it's a good thing, but if you give me like a pack of knowledge, I'm gonna glow in the dark for a while.
uh, my my stepdad, he used to be really susceptible to caffeine. Me, I've never been susceptible very much, but
Yeah, it works on me.
yeah, um, he had to do a cross country drive to get to from North Carolina to North Jersey, and
It's not a bad drive. That's a pretty good drive. Pretty much a straight shot.
yeah, he needed to get there in one day, so he
Yeah,
went
you
into
need
a
some coffee for that
pharmacy.
one.
Went into a pharmacy, and the pharmacist was like, "Hey, I've got these things now. The package says take only one. I'm gonna recommend you start with three, and then take one every six
The
hours."
pharmacist said that.
Yeah, and
Whoa, what was
so
what was the package?
no dose.
Oh hell no! Woo! He was taking three.
He took three to start with, and then he said he was basically flying. He didn't
I
even
bet he was.
realize where he was or what was going on.
You could probably hear squirrels' conversations in Seattle with that much noodles in the system. Whew, I can't imagine. I get if I drink half a 5 hour energy, I'm wired.
This is pretty cool. I'm sorry, Tony. It's hard to hear you. You keep cutting out.
Good morning.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Hi, Tony.
Hello. Good morning.
How's it going for you today? What's your coffee brew of choice this morning? Oh, he
My coffee brew choice is just strong and bitter like my life.
I
like
guess
it.
I don't count. All I had was apple juice this morning and water.
Well, coffee breaks don't have to have
For
coffee
shameless
involved in them.
Essentia and
Coffee breaks
I
definitely
know.
don't have to have coffee involved in them. It's cool.
But I want to be like the cool kids, James.
Nah, don't
all the
worry about it.
all the kids at school are doing it, Mom. Yeah, it never worked. My grandfather, he didn't care. He's like, I don't care what the kids at school are doing.
So, yeah, and then I was thinking about moving on to um, let's talk about a little bit about all this increased racism. I'm a little confused. I thought I thought this whole COVID thing we were all in it together.
We're not all in together, man. As long as Serpentor is president, people are going to be brave enough to feel exactly how he feels about everybody. Um, I don't think it's new racism. I just think it's newly televised racism. It's always been there. Unfortunately, I think it always will be there because as long as idiots are allowed to have children, it's never going to stop.
I, I keep hearing, we talk about it. We talk about this casual idea of, idiots having children and them not having children, and that possibly being a solution. But I mean, that's eugenics. We don't actually want that. I'm
Right,
just
right. No, I would never want to do that. I'm just talking from a place of just making
anger.
comedy of making light of it. But um, you have to instill in youth and in children and in people from, you know, childhood on up that everybody around you is a human being. Everybody around you deserves to be respected unless they disrespect you. And as we drift further and further from those core values, and that's, you know, everybody's drifting away from that, I think, and a lot of times, especially in this country, because this generation of youth is wild. As you drift away from those core values, it's going to get worse and worse. I just said how I feel. I'm not saying there aren't good people, because obviously we're on the phone with each other having a conversation. You know, it's a pleasure to meet Tony. James, you're one of my oldest friends. You're awesome. So there's good people out here, but we gotta have people, you know, breaking down these Jim Crow ideas of how race and people are. And, you know what I mean? Not to get all Ayanna Van Zandt and Dr. King on you, but that's what has to happen. It has to stop. It has to be a discussion. If you're not sure how people of a certain nationality are, make a friend of that nationality to find out.
Exactly. People need to educate them.
Exactly. We have to get to a point where you can't even call it the news anymore. Just the media cannot be your source of reference to find out about other cultures and how they interact in this country.
Yeah, we got to break
yourself
past this
in there and
ignorance
talk
first culture.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I mean, I've met a lot of people doing this job who had a certain impression about people like me who were from urban neighborhoods, who survived the crack era, who had people that were in gangs that died, and who had people that were in the dope game that died, and they see I'm not like that, and they're blown away. And I'm happy to be that good impression of a black guy, so to speak. But it just takes having a conversation. You know what I'm saying? Have a conversation.
It shouldn't be on you to
you're right.
break past their codified ignorance.
This is true.
You know, it pisses me off.
Believe me.
Like hello everybody. Sorry I'm late.
Hello.
I go
there
back.
He is. There's my spirit animal.
to be honest about like the whole like, you know, as minorities or oppressed people or whatever we're calling ourselves now, about the education of other people, because like, to be honest, like, who else is gonna teach people about that? Like, there's nobody else. Like, unless people hear our experiences, you know,
yeah,
not. So I know it's emotional labor and that's that whole thing, but the whole idea is that like, if someone is actually willing to take the time to legitimately ask a question and listen hard, then like, my labor is worth it, you know? Like,
yeah, but
right.
I think a little bit, I guess what I mean by what I was saying is I think that it doesn't need to be necessarily that a person from a particularly a location that has a particularly high level of ignorant ideas about it somehow be different or change in any way at all in order to help break past the ignorance, right? Like, I don't think that that's true, and I think it doesn't matter if I'm standing across. I'm a very light-skinned Mexican German. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter if I'm standing across from another very light-skinned Mexican German or a person from Mars. It's just as likely that my ignorance and their ignorance are not going to allow each other to communicate. So we got to put that ignorance aside and then really, really talk and really think. And I think that, you know, these coffee breaks have kind of been that, which I think is awesome. But like, it's important. I don't know. I'm on a soapbox. I apologize, but I think it's really important to realize that
we're here to hear you out. That's perfectly fine. We're here to hear you out.
It's really important to realize that
it's
ignorance.
I agree with you. It's nobody's job. Right.
Ignorance has no creed. It's everywhere. And so it's really important that, for me, it's always been very important that I don't assume that anything about the person that I'm encountering until we have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's not, I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying that's the only way I've been able to break through my own ignorance a little bit, because I've got ignorances, of course.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think the problem is that most people don't put that aside. It's not even putting ignorance aside. It's like acknowledging that you might be ignorant about something. Because like if you know about something, then you're not ignorant about it. Like you may be actively working on it, but like it's actually kind of weird. Sometimes I'm the conservatives more than progressives, because I think like at least conservatives know who the fuck they are, and they're just like, you know what? Yeah, I'm conservative, but I don't know, they seem cool. Who fucking cares? Like whatever. And you're like progressives are like, there's the performative whiteness a lot of the times, and there's just actually like they're like, there's the performative wokeness, and there's the like, oh, I'm progressive and all this other stuff, and you're like, well, why would you do that? I'm giving you a pass right now, like, because it's like conservatives, you're like, your guard's up a little bit. You're like, all right, that might take some stupid shit, and I'm like, all right, I gotta see if I'm like willing to fight or like talk them out of it or give a shit about it, and then like, you'll have questions with progressives where you're just like, that is the most racist fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. And like, you should know better. You have a postgraduate degree and you're woke, right? Like, one of the good ones.
So I always have an issue with quote unquote progressives when it comes to political debate, and they start getting upset because I don't agree with their position on, say, good example being changing of traffic laws to make things more, pedestrian. Um, we've been, I live in South Philly. We've been having a lot of debate around that, and I don't get along with certain groups that are purporting to be working in the to the advantage of everyone, because unfortunately, not everybody has the ability to take advantage of a uh, better pedestrian thoroughfare. So one of the problems becomes, also that those same people end up being some of the people who are supporting causes that I do agree with, or things that do benefit me. And how do we separate? So there was an incident recently, and I was accused of being in a big group of people involved. I was accused by a crazy person, so it's not that big a deal.
Of being in a group of people, okay.
Right. So they associated me with the what I was saying is a specific group of people. They associated me with Fifth Square, with Councilwoman Gim, and a couple other progressive people who I've had very, very public disagreements with. Like,
you're like, this is documented.
Right. And it's just, it's a little frustrating to figure out how to communicate what is necessary to communicate without allowing this noise in.
Yeah, I think the
I think the tough
problem.
part is when you're talking to someone that's like that. When you have debates on a subject with someone that's in front of you, are they answering you to enhance the conversation, or are they just reacting? Most of the time, people are just reacting to what you said. They didn't really understand what you said, but they heard a little bit of this, a little bit of that, that churned the reaction, and they're just firing back. And oftentimes, what I have to do when I discuss things with people is tell them this is the actual agenda. Everything else you're saying is valid to you, but this is the actual agenda. Can you answer the actual question? Can you stick to the agenda? And people still just, it's like trying to keep 7 kittens in a box. It's like, it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Because the box is too small to hold all little kittens. So okay, I understand your frustration, but you have to have someone that's capable of sticking to the subject and not taking it personal. Nowadays, when you don't agree with someone, they hate your guts. We can disagree on where to go to eat after lunch, but that don't mean you have to hate my guts for it. It's just like you can have a disagreement and not make it personal. But that seems to be lost nowadays on both sides of the equation politically, on just regular people. Everyone, for the most part, gets so upset because you don't agree with them.
Well,
Like,
I
I don't
think,
hate you. I just
yeah,
think what you're saying this is not valid to me, or I just don't agree with it. That doesn't mean I hate you.
I think like
It's crazy.
I don't know, like compare like saying James is one of those Gim people is like kind of weird. That's a very interesting person to pick because it's like she's like polarizing a little bit, which is kind of an interesting thing to say, but yeah, because I've met people who both like progressives and like the absolute opposite of progressives, where they're just like, yeah, I don't know, and I'm like, okay, like I trust your judgment. I mean, it's always seemed cool to me, but like I don't pay attention at the micro level. My buddy's wife's actually chief of staff, so like obviously I'm biased, but like I don't know. James talks more about like Councilman O than he does about any other council person. So like,
It's very true.
if like, yeah, I mean, no, I think so. That's more who I associate. Where I'm like, James is gonna talk about a councilman. It's probably gonna be David O, for better or for worse. I don't know. Like, but also might stand out because he is a Republican and we are like progressives, But
I talk about Councilman O a lot and actually work with him a lot, like directly contact him and try and speak with him directly a lot because he's one of the best examples of an actual representative that I can think of. He actually, he doesn't agree with me very much. He doesn't agree with my political standpoint very much. But he's willing to sit and listen and actually listen face
yeah,
to face to what I have to say, which is I mean, I don't get that kind of constituency service from most of city council and
yeah.
any of state or federal representation. I've never sat down or been invited to or been able to sit down with a representative from the federal government or the state government. Closest I've had is the lieutenant governor responding to my tweets about unemployment. You know, and then he stopped responding when I responded back. That's pretty shady. Um, but I I did have a huge long conversation yesterday with a conservative, um, and what I was saying to him was that he's a guy who lives across the country. He lives in Washington State, and we were having an argument online about mask wearing and the necessity of wearing a mask, particularly in a small town in Washington. And he was trying to express his viewpoints as questions on Facebook in a post about it. And I happen to know this town very well. I happen to have family there. My mother lives there, etc. So I am
Spokane.
very, very concerned about people, doing the safest thing. And I explained I come from a position in work where my whole job is to ensure everybody's safety. Like if somebody gets injured on a set, that's me that blows back on. And he was like, well, I'm, concerned with people's rights and overreach of government. And I said, I am too. Uh, you know, like that's a pretty big deal for me. I'm, a pretty contrarian person, so I will jump all over government when it overreaches. Unfortunately, this is one of those cases where it's better for the government to have acted, um, and then worry about the consequences later and try and fix any overreach in the post argument, not in the lead up.
Yeah. Hey James, is that what part of Washington is that?
Oh, just north of Seattle, Highland County.
Oh, north of Seattle. Okay. You know, being out here in New Mexico has been interesting because I've been watching very carefully the situation with the Navajo Nation and a couple of specific pueblos, and how fast and powerfully the COVID virus has spread in those very low population areas, and it has made me think a lot about this sort of question about how we're affected by the rules of the government. Because the Navajo people are very independent people. They're very, very, they do things the way they do them. And so it's been very, very difficult to get them to wear masks and to get them to, it's sad. But it's also difficult because, we want them to have that culture. And so it's not an easy question. I wondered how all the smart minds on this Zoom would treat that particular question.
Well,
Navajo Nation in particular.
Yeah, that one has been, in particular, been hit very, very hard. And there was one non-Navajo Native American group that I think there was a total of 800 people in the community, and they had within a day or two they had 80 cases.
Wow.
And so what they've started to do is actually block off the access to those places from anyone. Been very, very, very careful about who goes in and out. And now the Sioux Nation, I don't know if you've heard about this, Sioux Nation is blocking road access all the way through. And the governor of South Dakota, one of the Dakotas, I can't remember which all of a sudden, is saying they have to remove the roadblocks. And
there's interstates, right? Because I mean, most of when you're going from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, once you get on, it's a 25. You're pretty much going through a whole bunch of Pueblo nations, aren't you?
Correct, and none of that access has been stopped. But in Dakotas, they have.
Wow.
And so the governor is saying that they have to stand down, and they're saying no, we don't.
And they're not doing it.
They're not doing it, which is good.
Nope.
Yeah.
So actually,
I mean, I would say that the general. So this is where small government, local government butts right up against big solution.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that was the prime um, discussion topic that the guy who I was the conservative guy I spoke with for a few hours yesterday, and I had, and there are advantages and disadvantages to both. So big solution, obviously, it's the easiest, quickest way to protect the smallest edge case. So if you put out a big solution, right, nationwide response, nobody can move around. Everybody should stay within, a couple of 100 miles of their home. You allow people to get home or whatever. You make certain exceptions for certain reasons. Um, but big shutdown, big response. Nobody goes to work. There are no employees who are required workers. That's the easiest way to guarantee everybody is covered. Everybody um, doesn't have a problem because everybody can then point to the government and say, "Hey, I was ordered to do this. Um, so I would love to come to work, but I can't." Um, on the flip side of the coin, there's local response. Um, the Navajo Nation, the Sioux Nation, whomever, even this small town in the Pacific Northwest, is it worth stopping everybody from moving around in that specific place? Should those people be allowed to choose for themselves whether they move around, whether they accept people without masks? It's a tough question. Again, and I go to um, in this particular case, it's a pandemic. It's better to do the big response first, and then work backwards from there.
Mhm.
I don't think, um, in specific to First Nations people and their sovereignty, I don't think that the state government has any right to order the government of a sovereign nation to do anything.
They don't.
They don't.
They don't.
None whatsoever. And I think where the real tiny fine line comes in is actually where their sovereignty meets the federal enforcement. So if that ever becomes a question, that's going to be a really, really tough moment. Another really tough moment for Native Americans in our country.
Well, the good thing about the federal response up till now, and I say that with all the scare quotes in the world, good thing, is that they didn't create a response that involved any sort of um, any sort of shutdown or anything like that. So that meaning that since they didn't limit travel, there's no way for them to say, okay, travel is open again because they didn't start with the authority, so they have no authority now. Um, which, I think is why you're seeing uh, this local type protest response. Um, they
I think. Well, I mean, those protests. I think people have more time in their hands than they need. But I think as far as like, so the national
Many
thing.
of us do right now.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. But like, so I think that like, as far as the national thing, I think that like, I think Cuomo said it best. People are like, people are like, Cuomo didn't act fast enough. And he's like, look, this was the first confirmed case. This is when I started doing things. Like, what exactly do you want from me? He's like, so this is New York City. You can't just tell people to like just close their business, stay home. They'll just tell you to go fuck yourself. Like you have to like
which is exactly what they did.
Which is exactly what they did. But like
which is exactly why they're one of the hottest spots. New Jersey is the same way.
So
same exact way.
But the thing is that the federal government, well, I guess one good thing about Trump being lazy and stupid is that he didn't really take any action, which like, you know, I can't believe I'm saying that, but like, you know, in a part of way, that's a good thing because like, you know, I'm sure there's been, you know, a wise person who wanted to overreach could definitely overreach during this time. But at the same time, because the federal government didn't act, like local governments didn't have any cover. So it's like easy for us to say like, oh, mayors and governors just like shut shit down. And you're like, well,
that's not
like,
easy.
Get reelected. Like they're responsible for people like beyond being alive, which is a fucking crazy saying, but like, you know, doing the right thing and keeping everybody alive doesn't, you know, necessarily win re-election. You know,
yeah. Well, I wonder if that gets down to a fundamental identity question about us and whether or not the thing that we protect as a nation is our money or our people.
It's always money first. Always. Always. I've literally lived in another country. It's also a democracy, South Korea. And I can honestly say I can see exactly how a democracy can be ran when the people come first and the money comes third. Every part of that nation that I visited, that I frequented, they do everything to make the people, especially elderly people, comfortable. And they honestly give a shit about their citizens. I'm not saying that America is completely heartless, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's like everything comes down to the money always first. And that has to stop. At some point, it has to stop. You have to start putting your citizens, not your corporations, not your investors, not your backers. You have to start putting your citizens first. All your citizens, not just the 1%, 3%. And that does not happen here. It just doesn't.
I mean, I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. But like, I think America, we're definitely money first, but I think we are more of an individualistic country. And I think a lot of the Asian countries are more collective.
Well,
like,
yeah, we're
which individuals?
Yeah.
Which individuals matter?
Yeah, and that and also that's the problem is that we're in a very long time.
I think I was maybe 7 years old. Right.
I mean, there's pluses and minuses to everything. I'm more of a rabid pragmatist, so I can see the good and the bad of both sides, you know. But
I thought you said rabbit pragmatist, so I thought that would be a good T-shirt to have.
Not rabbit.
That's exactly what I thought I heard, but I don't think you said that.
So wait, what were you doing in South Korea? Were you in the service or something?
My ex-wife was a major in the Army.
Okay.
So yeah, I got the chance to live over there, and then I got the chance to get divorced to come back. So that's how that went down.
Actually,
yeah,
like,
I loved it over there.
I've known a fair amount of people who've lived there. My cousin, like, she taught English there for like 2 or 3 years. It's like weird because like she's like really shy and like never really talks, and she's technically not my cousin, but you know, it doesn't really matter.
What?
But that's a very long story. But like, so she's my real cousin's sister, but they're, you know, it's a transitive relationship, so whatever. But no, it was just weird. Like we were like, oh, and she just up and went to Korea for like 2 or 3 years. We're like, okay, like, you know, I didn't really
English teachers from what I met were having a ball over there. Like those young kids that get paid a lot of money just to teach English as a second language. Their living expenses are very expensive because the American dollar goes further.
Yeah.
The clubs, the bars, the shopping, the food, everything is like so awesome over there. Especially if you're like in your 20s. Who the hell would come back? Who would come back?
I know someone who
Keep
lived
up,
there for
Brent.
like 5 years. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like that
Didn't
seems
Brittany
better
do
than
some
Japan.
stuff there, James?
I actually don't know.
Yeah, I think she has.
Who did?
A friend of ours. The way that James and I have met, even though we've only met on the phone and on Zoom, James and I have. So.
Yeah.
So, next topic I did want to touch on at some point today. I'm sorry, I'm eating a donut because I didn't get a chance to make breakfast yet.
You never have to explain why you're eating a donut.
Well, I'm eating a donut because I like donuts.
There you go. Be a man. Own up to it.
So there's a new movement to, well, I don't suppose it's really new. Happens every time. There's a movement to kind of
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Pre-adjudicate the extrajudicial killing of Ahmed Aubrey.
What do you mean by that? What is pre-adjudicate?
So there's a bunch of YouTube channels, and I'm glad this is going out on YouTube because there's a bunch of YouTube channels with supposed legal experts who
Oh God!
are
Oh boy.
who are taking the timeline of events and reading them moment for moment and trying to apply Georgia law to them. And
They do know we actually saw the video, right? With like, it wasn't reenacted with like sock puppets or like, you know what I mean? There wasn't no graphic house that did it. Like the same guy that did the Minions didn't do the cartoon. We physically saw this video of this guy jogging. You stopped him and then you shot him.
So
unarmed. He didn't have a flat screen down his pants near his balls. He wasn't robbing anybody. You fucking shot him for nothing.
So that's what they're trying to pre-adjudicate is whether or not they were justified in trying to stop him. And I gotta say, all of these issues always turn, like in the actual legal system, when you get in front of a judge, all these issues turn into did that particular moment actually happen? There's no, oh, he was walking around a construction site, so we followed him and then shot him. There's no, like, in the actual judicial system, there's no, like, oh, there's these circumstances, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that might affect how long you're in jail for, but you're going to fucking jail.
Well, but isn't it? Wouldn't you say though that our particular legal system, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know exactly, but I've started to understand and learn recently that our particular legal system is very procedural, and therefore it isn't even about whether or not this event happened. It's about whether or not the lawyer in the courtroom can place the evidence in front of a set of people in a certain way that triggers certain kinds of one, procedures, two, laws, and three, reactions by that law. And so it, other systems I've come to understand are much more about what happened on that day than ours is.
Yes, they are, and yes, there's our system is very procedural in that if when a case like this goes to court, one side, the defense, is probably going to try to limit or to increase what evidence gets, the defense is probably going to try to increase what evidence gets introduced to the jury if it's a jury trial, assuming they don't opt for a judge decided trial. But the defense always is trying to add extenuating circumstances, even though, as far as the law is concerned, extenuating circumstances don't matter. So what the people who are supporting this extrajudicial killing are doing is they're trying to, in social media, in media in general, introduce all these facts of evidence so that they're in all jurors' minds. So there's no way that somebody can impanel a truly unbiased jury.
Right.
They're trying to get all these ideas into people's heads so that people have them in their heads.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, what state was that in?
Georgia.
No. I mean, it's just weird because, like, you know, if there was a white guy jogging and two black guys just shot him, like, it would just be like, I mean, this would be a different story. Like.
And when I argue with people, they get mad when I say the average, I hate the term, African American firmly believes there's two sets of judicial systems. Because when this stuff happens, I always play devil's advocate. I say, okay, change the race around. If it happened to someone that was Caucasian, Anglo-Saxon, whatever you want to call it, and it was two African Americans that did it, we would not be having this conversation.
No, we wouldn't.
So if that's the case, then we have to look at this case for what it is, an execution. Even as a U.S. citizen, I can make a citizen's arrest. I don't have the right to stop, detain, and fire a weapon on someone who's just walking. I don't have that right.
No, a citizen's arrest.
I don't.
A citizen's arrest, you can ask somebody to stop.
Right, but I can't detain them and discharge my weapon.
You can stand in front of them all you want. You can stand in front, like, you can stand in front of a car that hit you and say, please stop. I'm waiting for the police to respond to this incident.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't take out a gun and threaten to shoot that person or actually shoot them. So, I don't know. There are two systems.
Is that dependent on state or dependent on federal? Just out of curiosity, because I know Florida has some pretty crazy laws when it comes to that kind of stuff.
So the most forgiving stand your ground law that I know of.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, but the most forgiving stand your ground law I know of does not apply to citizen's arrest. Even the most forgiving ones that I know of. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert in law everywhere in every jurisdiction, but as far as I understand, stand your ground specifically applies to making people leave, not making people stay. So if you're trying to enact a citizen's arrest, you're not standing your ground. You're trying to hold somebody. So that's how I would answer that. And I have no idea how a real lawyer would answer it. It's just what it seems like to me. Not a lawyer, so I can only go with what I think is correct, but it's an educated guess.
Well, the weird thing is those laws have nothing to do with, like, de-escalation. So, like, I mean, obviously the Trayvon Martin thing is that, a little bit, like, polarizing, and, like, to be honest, we don't really know what happened, but we know for sure that the person with the gun did not de-escalate the situation. Like,
At all.
Like, that should be, like, kind of the standard.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
well, I mean that should be the standard in any case. I don't think we have any laws that actually apply to it, unfortunately, but that should be the standard. Is whoever has more power in the situation has is it's their liability, so to speak. Um, they're liable. And I think most laws around this kind of stuff do boil down to that, and most rulings boil down to that. You know, if you're in an incident and somebody has more power in the form of, say, a gun, or more power in the form of, say, uh, you know, some other form of protection. Just trying to think, like, say
The threat,
somebody was
the threat has to be equal. What I've learned from the gun safety class that I took before I decided to get my first firearm, if you're going to use deadly force to defend yourself, the threat has to be equal. If the guy is holding nail clippers, you can't pull out a 357 Magnum and liberate his brains from his skull. You can't do that. So if a kid's walking through your neighborhood with Skittles, you got an AR-15, you can't do that. You can't. You just
And
can't.
I think some people would say that, unfortunately, that's where some of that breaks down when it comes to how law enforcement deals with things. Because in fact, they use force against no force all the time, because they have that power as bestowed to them by the government.
Right.
Well, they actually don't have the power to use force against against a lack of force. That's where all the
Right.
operational guidelines for police come into play. But that's also why you hear people on police videos say gun, is because as soon as somebody on site says gun, they can escalate to assuming that a perpetrator has a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But it's like then they try to justify using crazy amounts of force to take down like a 7-year-old or like a 10-year-old at a pool party.
or a
And I'm like,
guy,
okay, I know you got training as a police officer. I have friends that are cops, that are homicide detectives. I know correctional officers. I know you're trained to take somebody down that's my size and bigger. So there's no way you're going to tell me you have to flip over a 10-year-old girl to take her down. And it takes 4 of you to put your knee in her back to take down a 10-year-old girl. You need to quit being a cop if it takes you that much force to take down a girl.
yeah,
You're like
I
turning your badge right. I can take a damn kid. I used to work with fifth through eighth grade. I'm not a restrained one if I have to, and put the other one against the wall when they're fighting. And I'm not trained like that.
yeah,
So
it again comes back to a law that doesn't exist that probably should, or we should figure out a way to make it exist, which is the equalization of power. If you're dealing with a 7-year-old, I don't care how feisty that 7-year-old is, um, they're not gonna injure you. Like, they might sprain your finger. um, but I've had 7-year-olds flip the heck out on me.
right,
I might get broken skin. They might cut me. Whatever. There is no life-threatening situation here.
yeah.
Same with an
If little
unarmed.
Timmy can, a little Timmy can take you. You need to stop being a cop right now. Just hang it up. I'm talking crossing guard, buddy. That should be the extent of your badge right there. Not even mall cop, just crossing guard.
Jahi, do you have a CCP? I mean,
Yeah,
what is it
I'm
called?
working on it right now. Concealed carry permit. Yeah, I'm working on it right now.
And so, can you tell me what it's been like for you? Have you ever been stopped by by law enforcement?
Often.
And what is it like for you? How do they react when they see your permit?
Well, I don't have it on me now, and the gun I actually have is an AR-15. So that's home. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm getting another call here that I'm not going to respond to. Hello? Okay, there you go. But when I have it on me going to the range, I only had maybe 1 or 2 cops kind of flip out when I said, listen, here's my license, my registration. I have my weapon. I have the ammunition stored in a separate place. The weapon is not chambered. I'm just letting you know so that if you decide to search my vehicle, you're not surprised. Most of the cops I've dealt with are appreciative that I told them about it. I've only had one cop kind of like, whoa, why do you have a gun? Like, I just came from the range. Calm down. You know what I mean? It's in the trunk. It's in the trunk. I will pop the trunk. I'm consenting to a search. I'm not going to listen. I don't want no problems. And my hands are on the steering wheel. I know the rules of engagement. And it's crazy that I have to go through this dialogue with every officer that I meet, black, white, female. It doesn't matter because you represent the same organization that's under scrutiny right now. So I don't want to get shot for being compliant, and I damn sure don't want to be shot for being non-compliant. So I'm going to play by the rules. I don't have a problem with police officers. I have a problem with people who should not be police officers. Those are my issues.
Yeah.
If you're going from 0 to 60 and your automatic response is to discharge your weapon, you should not be a cop. You shouldn't be at all.
Like the burden of restraint, the burden of expectation and restraint from those particular human beings in our existence should actually be higher for them than anything else. And so,
Absolutely.
When you find a really good police officer, it's really interesting to see how that they take that incredibly seriously.
Oh, yeah.
The rights of the citizens.
Yeah, they do, and it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see. I've dealt with officers all my life. It's interesting to see that it doesn't really matter what their background is. It more matters what the department background is.
Yeah, the culture
in
that department.
Yeah. So I don't know what the solution there is. I mean, the real solution would be if officers actually followed the law. That would be nice, or followed common sense. I don't know.
I think that stiffer laws need to be in place when, without a shadow of a doubt, lethal force was set in place and it didn't have to happen. I don't care if the person that is murdered, and I do mean murdered, is Latino, so-called African American, Irish. If you take a life as a police officer and you didn't have to, there's no firearm, there's no threat, and you execute them, I'm talking life or death penalty automatically. Do not pass go. Something has to happen, because what's going on now? Nothing happens. No matter what color they are, no matter what their background is, you shouldn't be allowed to just blast somebody for nothing, no matter what race they are. That's not right.
Yeah.
It's just not right. I don't care what race you're. I don't want to see nobody get shot for nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And some black people get mad at me. Well, what about us? I said, I included us, you idiot. I said nobody. Nobody. Sometimes our own people, James, they hear you, but they listen. Like, I literally said everybody. Didn't I say I said everybody, right?
Did you hear? I heard me. Did you?
I was standing here when I said it, as my grandfather would say. It's just like, oh my gosh, dude, are you hearing me? I said everybody. You can't just say only black people. Everybody's getting shot by the people who can't control themselves. Someone just give us get a break on the brown people. Like, no, everybody needs to stop getting shot for nothing. Stop it.
I heard that in New York City, again, I don't have the direct source on this, which is always a problem, but I heard that in New York City at one point they decided to increase the standards for the ability for them to draw their weapon.
When you say increase the standard, what do you mean?
It means it takes longer for them to pull their gun out. It takes more for them to pull their gun out. And they found that the number of cop firearm injuries and deaths decreased by a lot. So if they were not pulling out their gun, they were also not getting shot. And I thought that was really interesting. And I, I read it somewhere. It's probably about 5 years ago, and it's gotten lost in the fray probably at this point. But I think that's, I think they teach that in the concealed weapons or concealed carry permits, that it should be the absolute last resort for you to even brandish that weapon.
Exactly.
You should never pull it out, because if you do, someone's gonna get hurt or die, and that is not what we want.
I think it's also interesting to look at current crime statistics from places like New York, where all crime has decreased, but officer-involved shootings have not. And we need. There's a lot of data being collected right now that I'm gonna say is gonna be real interesting in the months and years after this, that can really, really help us with some big social issues. There's a lot of climate data being collected. Literally, 90% of the population is drastically decreasing what they do from day to day and the amount of resources they use from day to day. You have crime completely decreasing in many, many areas, even though, some crime is still going on. It's gone so down that it's going to be fascinating to see how all these statistics work out. It's a giant experiment right now, and I just hope that we actually get to use all of that data for the science that it is. Anyway, I wanted to wrap up because it's 11, and it's I just wanted to make 2 quick points before I wrap up. I normally promote something, so I'm going to promote that this is real simple, folks. It's going to end. It's going to end, and it's going to end when we have an effective treatment, or we have a vaccine, or both. Could be both. If we develop the effective treatment and then have a vaccine, and you don't want to get vaccinated, you don't want to wear a mask, you don't want to do this or that or the other thing, go right ahead. We have an effective treatment. But short of an effective treatment and a vaccine...
An effective treatment for them.
Yeah. So, and then until that happens, it's real simple. Stay inside and stay in your house as much as possible. If you have to go out,
stop going to Walmart 7 times a day. Stop it.
Yeah, stop it. We have essential workers going out. Look, Jay's in his truck right now delivering your stuff. We have essential workers. Stay inside your house as much as possible. As much as possible does include your mental health, so go out to a park and take a walk or a jog or bicycle ride if you need to. When you're out, wear a mask, wash your hands regularly, stay 6 feet apart from other people. It's super simple. And, it'll end. It will end. I know we're all impatient, but it will end. The other point
I can wait.
Yeah. Other point that I wanted to make was that Ahmaud Arbery was shot in an extrajudicial killing. There is no argument about that. A man is dead. There is no excuse that justifies that death.
Absolutely.
And if anybody thinks so, that's a threat to me and all the people on this chat, and probably all the people watching this chat. You don't get to just kill people. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a cop.
And in law and in the judiciary system, you don't get to just not prosecute that for whatever reason because you like those people or you think that they have the right kind of whatever.
For like 2 months. Months. What? If I steal a candy bar from 7-Eleven, I'm going to jail right now. That's all I'm saying right now for a candy bar. That's
Yep.
ridiculous.
Yep.
Too much.
All right. Thanks for joining me, guys. See you again next Wednesday, I
Anytime, brother.
hope. And I'll talk to you all
Yep.
later.
Yeah.